What is up, Fightful faithful? Welcome back here to another interview on Fightful Scraps. Today, I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the man who just returned a Progress Wrestling Never Sleeps, Cara Noir. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm glad. And we'll start things off then with Progress Wrestling Never Sleeps. I've very rarely been in venues for such big moments like your return, but I have to say when it did happen, the electric ballroom just exploded. I have not heard a live audience react that quickly and that fast to the opening track of a theme music before. So I want to know from your POV, what was that like walking out from behind the curtain and just hearing that reception after so long away?
Yeah, it was incredible. Like it's one of those moments that I've been thinking about for the last year and a half. Like how would I do it? How do I want to, how would I want to be presented the first time I step back out? But from a wrestler's perspective, people were asking me whether I was nervous backstage, those that knew. And I wasn't nervous. I just thought I might just walk out and no one's going to care. Because out of sight, out of mind, you never know, right? So
Yeah.
as soon as I entered, I kind of went deaf. I couldn't hear the audience. It was such a weird sensation. Like as wrestlers, when you first start wrestling, you can't hear the audience because you're so focused on what you're doing. But this time it was kind of like, oh, I've forgotten how to hear the audience. And it wasn't until I stood in the ring, I was like, I'm back. I can hear you. And it was, if I reflect back on that moment, felt like seconds. I must have been out there 5 minutes, but it felt like seconds.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And with such a long time on the shelf, obviously you even mentioned yourself on when you were injured, you weren't sure what would happen going forward. For you, what was the hardest part of that recovery for you? Obviously, it was such a long process, but kind of was there a fear that you wouldn't be able to get back in the ring again?
Yeah, I was told I wasn't going to be able to wrestle again. I was also told that I probably won't be able to walk again. And after the diagnosis, the misdiagnosis originally, and then not fully finding out the details of the break for about 18 weeks. So after the cage match, like a week later, I went and got married, and then I went back to the NHS, and I support the NHS, and I love that there's, we have that system, but they're so overprescribed at this point, overworked. They weren't able to give me the care that as a sports athlete I needed. And because of the injury was so complex, a lot of people would say to me in the NHS, it would have been better if you'd broken your femur, because we could have fixed that quickly. So after about 12 weeks of, it's going to take 12 weeks and then it will heal up, and then realizing that it hasn't healed at all was quite traumatic. And in that period of time, I'd been on holiday, and then we had to then go seek special private care. And the sitting in that office and being told that you may not be able to walk again, or you may not be able to return to wrestling, was a really tough pill to swallow. And still, like now, it still makes me very emotional remembering that feeling. Yeah. But the best advice he gave me is, we can do this surgery and it's going to cost a lot of money. And the advice that he gave me was, your leg is atrophying, and you've been on crutches for 3-4 months by this point. You now need to go use it. You can't break it any more than it's already broken. So go and walk on it. He said, leave this office and go do some squatting. So it's exactly what I did. And I spent most of last year building my way up to be able to take load weight on it and start to walk and then run and then researching different ways to treat broken feet, because it's surprisingly more common in certain athletes. And then I just built up strength. And then by the time I went back to see him at the beginning of the year, this was April, I was surprised to walk back in and see a smile on his face.
Yeah.
After he'd seen all the MRIs and X-rays that, and took me a long while to accept that my foot had fused back together by scar tissue, not by bone on bone, by scar tissue. And I'm so thankful during that period of time that we raised such a large portion of money. Unfortunately, it turned out that I needed significantly more for the complexity of what it was. And because I'm a man, I was so ashamed of asking for help. Originally, I didn't want to go back and then ask for further help. So I used that money to get the scans that I want, see the doctors that I want, or the specialists that I want, have the extra treatment and homeopathic treatment and different massages and different ways to actually increase blood flow. So it was a lot of suffering, but the main focus for me at that point last year was not to return to wrestling, because it was the summertime and I couldn't take my daughter, who's 5, to the playground. So my goal was just to be able to, next summer, I'm going to take her to the playground.
Yeah.
And the risk of the surgery that we were considering, that was significantly more expensive than I was originally quoted, was if it didn't work, they'd have to fuse my foot. And that means no athletic performance. I couldn't run. I couldn't do anything. It would have been fixed. And taking the chance to try to heal it myself was the only route that I could have taken.
Yeah. I can imagine. So, and with your return, when you did return of progress to wrestling and sleeps, immediately you stepped up to the two, let's say the two head honchos currently of progress and the fight. First, Luke Jacobs, who, let's say, got out there relatively quickly when your attention got distracted. Was it kind of, when you knew you were coming back, was Luke someone that you wanted to work with again? I know you worked with him before in 2021, but since then he's had such an incredible growth as a pro wrestler.
Yeah, so like in the last, even the last year and a half since I've been off, Luke has kind of, hit his stride to the point where he's such an incredible performer. He was when I wrestled him behind closed doors in the Peckham era of tapings. And it's so good to see him be elevating other companies as well. That of course I'd love to have another go around with Luke Jacobs. I think it would be I don't know, there's always that element of doubt, right? But when you square up to these people in the ring, but especially coming back post injury, but it's either go big or go home. I either belong on this stage and I have to test my foot now, and let's see what happens.
And that kind of answers my second question, but I got to ask it anyway. Then, as I said, you stepped up to Kenta. And is Kenta someone who you've long wanted to wrestle? Obviously, you've wrestled some incredible names in your career: Pac, Will Ospreay, Michael Oko, Ilya Dragunov, Walter. Is Kenta someone that you've been looking to add to that list for a long time, even prior to your injury?
Kenta was probably on my list all the way back in 2006. So the opportunity to stand in front of Kenta and be like, okay, this is my go big. No disrespect to Luke or any other competitors in the ring, but Kenta is where I test myself.
Absolutely. And they weren't the only two guys in the ring. There's a lot of guys in progress that are kind of trying to almost trip over each other to get to the Progress World title. Obviously, Eddie Dennis is next in line. And Eddie Dennis is someone who you've kind of been in the ring with before yourself and wrestled with before and kind of been around a long time in Progress and so on. he said that 2025 is probably going to be his last year in wrestling. Is Eddie someone that you really want to lock up with one more time before that happens?
Yeah, so with Eddie, I traveled a lot with Eddie during my earlier stages or mid stages of my career. So it would be really fun to get back into the ring and have, maybe it might be the last match, like one of his last matches, always wind down matches, but it'd be great to send him off with something that we can be both proud of and make magic in the ring, because we flow really well together.
And moving away from Progress just for a small bit, before your injury, you were also a mainstay in Riot Cabaret, who over the course of the last year or so have also grown exponentially. And is that something as well that you're looking to kind of like, right, I really want to try that again, or is it kind of wait and see with your injury kind of situation?
Of course. Like, there's lots of opportunities that have come up. Even before I'd turned up the other day at the ballroom, and it's just trying to judge that right time. Like, I felt really bad for Riot Cabaret at that period of time, because I just won their title, and I felt like I let them down, because they were planning X, Y, and Z, and then it all had to pivot and change. But there was a lot of, it's such an amazing event. I think Riot Cabaret as a all-round piece. It's one of those shows that you can bring anyone in, even non-wrestling fans, and they'll have a great time. And that's the type of wrestling I have. That variety show of wrestling is the thing that I'm really passionate about. Like, I'm not everyone's taste, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, I love a little bit of everything. I like a little bit of technical wrestling, lucha libre, high flying, comedy, clowning, whatever it is, right? Even Nina Samuels singing her,
getting her musical chops
getting her musical thing in. Yeah, like, even that is a great like variety show.
And you mentioned, like, as you mentioned, the variety and the stuff that you put out there yourself is just one massive variety act. And I'm just wondering, can you give any hints or teasers to what we could see from Cara Noir in the near future now that he's back? Is there any ideas that came into your head while you're away that you're looking forward to implementing?
Hundreds of ideas, hundreds of things that I'm gonna start drip feeding the audience, and how Cara is presented, and my perspectives on wrestling. The thing that I learned the most from last year was there's never a perfect time. As in, when I was at like white hot stage, COVID happened. Then before that, then we had to rebuild, and then we built it up to filling the ballroom back up, and like a post pandemic, and then the injury happens, and going back from and then opportunities, and then shut down, and now it's about, okay, well, it's great being an independent wrestler, because you get to make a lot of decisions until you get hurt.
Yeah. And now the British wrestling landscape, you mentioned they're building it back up, having to build it back up after the pandemic, after other issues in the past. Even in the year and a half since you left, you mentioned how Luke Jacobs has come along. The British scene has kind of almost gone through a renaissance kind of feeling of just partially due to AEW coming over twice for the events, WWE and so on. But the British wrestling scene is probably healthier than it's been in a long time. Have you noticed that on your time on the shelf? Has that been something that you've been keeping tabs on, or have you just been focused on your recovery?
I've mainly been focused on my recovery. I have kept dipped in every now and then to kind of see where how the competition and how how the scene is changing, it's just the evolution of where we're currently at. So if we go back to when the WWE came over and they set up NXT UK, they a lot of the talent went and obviously worked there, and that's great for them. And it left this big void, and there was only a few of us to fill it at that period of time. But now those younger guys from 5 years ago are now smashing it, and now they're taking it, and now they're stepping up to the plate, and that is incredible. So it's just the evolution of the industry. It's just that original acquisition, maybe we say, took a lot of the talent out of Brit Rest, but now we are in a better position than we were prior.
And I mentioned there that I asked you about new things for your character and so on, but I'm curious, was there ever a consideration from you when you did return to the ring? Was there any idea for a repackage or anything like that, or was it always going to be more Cara Noir?
I think the idea of evolution is really important, especially to stay fresh. And evolution, as we go through the next few months, you'll see a slight change, and I'll keep changing it until I'm happy with what I have. But the first appearance, I think it's always, from my perspective, I just wanted to walk out as classic Cara, and what people missed and what people saw, and they can celebrate that period of time, and I can celebrate it and be able to walk to the ring. But yes, things will evolve, and they always do.
I'm sure fans would be really looking forward to that. And something that that's the thing, or when you did return after the initial face-off, when you were left in the ring alone and the crowd came around the ring just slamming the sides of the ring, and you just you could see the emotion just falling off of you. What was it like as you mentioned before, you thought you were afraid people weren't going to know you, they weren't going to react to you. What did that moment feel like? Did that just feel like catharsis for you?
That's a good question. I think catharsis, it is a feeling that if wrestling went away tomorrow and I couldn't wrestle again, I wouldn't really miss it.
Yeah.
As I've discovered over the last year and a half. But what I do miss is that connection that I feel that I'm able to generate and connect with the audience, because they welcomed me home and I was happy and overwhelmed to be there. And that connection is so unique specifically to wrestling that whatever performance that maybe I ever chose to go into after wrestling or what have you would not fulfill that element and that fan connection and that emotion, and being able to get the audience to be happy and sad, and there was people crying and I was crying, and it's organic, and it was just breathtaking to be in that moment. But again, as I said, feels like it was only a second I was in. Yeah.
And like we said a couple of times, a lot's changed in progress since you stepped away to recover. Someone who kind of stepped into your role as one of the top faces of the promotion was Kid Lycos without his mask as the Progress World Champion. And I'm just wondering if you kept up with his kind of run with the title and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so I was there for most of Lycos's run, supporting in other ways that I could backstage. And I thought it was fantastic. It was a fantastic emotional build, and it allowed an evolution of Lycos. It's the next step and the next trajectory to change and evolve. And that's important for wrestling. We get so fixed on this is who we are, rather than think of, okay, where can this character go? And that was a really lovely character arc that allowed him to express himself in a very different way.
And before I do let you go, I just have one more question for you. For the rest of 2024 and 2025, what would be your primary goals with your return to the ring? Is it kind of just to stay healthy? Is it to kind of remind people how good you've been, or is it to work with all the young talent coming through in the British scene? Is there anything specific that comes to mind?
First and foremost is to stay healthy.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I don't want to go back to how I was a year and a half ago. So that's the main thing. But there's a sense of determinism. I'm determined in the fact that I now need to make a bang.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to make the loudest noise I possibly can. For a silent performer, that's not the easiest.
Yeah.
But I feel that the return was a good start of making the noise that I needed to do. And I think that being very cautious on where I work and who I work for, just for my own safety and my own health.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
the opportunity to work with big names like Kenta or Luke Jacobs, who are on the top of the mountain at the moment, is exciting. I only want to do the exciting things that light me up, the things that I wasn't able to consider or even think about last year.
I completely understand, man. And thank you so much for sitting down with me for this interview today, man. You've been an absolute pleasure. And I think I echo the sentiments of all fans when I say welcome back and can't wait to see what you do next. Do you want to tell people where they can follow you on social media? And can you reveal if there's any appearances coming up for you?
I won't reveal any appearances at the moment, but I'm around and I will be around, so just keep an eye on social media. And it's just search Cara Noir because it's pretty distinct. You can find
it. Just a bit.
Yeah, so you will find, so if you want to follow me on a platform, they're
there. Once again, Cara, thank you so much for chatting with me today. You've been absolutely great. Guys, make sure to go follow him. Make sure to go, if you haven't discovered Cara yet, you're going to be glad that he is back in the ring, because he's one of the most eccentric, one of the best wrestlers in the world at conveying everything without saying a word. So make sure to go check him out. Keep up to date with his return. And yeah, guys, if you're new, make sure to subscribe to Fightful Scraps. Check us out, Fightful out on all platforms, and we'll see you all in the next one. See you.
Thank you.